Hey everybody, welcome back to the TXRF podcast, and we got a lot to talk about this week. Not with the major league team though, with the minor league team. So before we get into it, I wanted to talk about a couple things. First is I want to let y'all know that I do have a SeatGeek code if you didn't already know. The code is TXRangers and it will get you $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more. So some of these games late in the season now, especially with where Texas is at in the standings, do get pretty cheap. So if you want to see a game, go ahead and get yourself some tickets. It's definitely the best time to go and do so. And with that being said, I also wanted to mention that my podcast on Anchor FM is at 29 of 50 unique listeners. And if I get to 50, it will help me monetize the podcast and help me continue to put out these episodes because, I do talk for a while sometimes here. So business stuff out of the way. I did want to mention one more thing before we get into today's talk, which ranges on a lot of different topics. But the Field of Dreams game in Iowa tonight, if you watched it, it was amazing. And if you didn't, look up the highlights because the White Sox ended up walking off on a Tim Anderson 2-run home run. They gave up 4 runs in the top of the 9th. And then they scored 2 in the bottom of the 9th to win it. So absolutely insane. It was 9-8. Very cool stuff. Lots of history was made in Iowa tonight. So check that out if you haven't. So as I mentioned already, there is a lot of farm stuff that I want to talk about relating to the minor league teams. And the first thing I want to cover is the promotions made within the organization. So the biggest one is definitely Justin Foscue from High A Hickory to Double A Frisco. But some of the other ones were right-handed pitcher Daniel Robert was promoted from Hickory to Frisco. Infielder Josh Smith was promoted from Hickory to Frisco. Left-handed pitcher Juan Carlos Mejia was promoted from the ACL Rangers to Frisco, which is a huge jump. I'm assuming he might have been on a rehab assignment or something. And then catcher Connor Piotto was promoted from Low A down east to Hickory. So awesome stuff going on there. Justin Foscue is ranked the Rangers' 5th prospect according to MLB.com, and he started off a little rough with an injury, but in 33 games with Hickory, he has slashed 296, 407, 736, which that makes a 1.143 OPS with 14 home runs and 35 driven in. If you saw my YouTube channel as well, he had a streak of 8 games in a row with a home run. So, the dude was absolutely killing it, definitely worthy of the promotion, and maybe they'll see him up sometime next year. That would certainly be cool to see. Getting into a quick update on each of the main teams, starting with Low A Down East Wood Ducks, and for those who don't know, that is actually the team. I believe they're based in North Carolina, but they're doing pretty well on the season, 2nd place in the Central Division of Low A East with a 49-37 record. I think they're actually playing as I'm recording this, but the record doesn't mean a lot. The players are what we're looking at here, and probably the biggest one from here is Luis Angel Acuna, who is, of course, Ronald Acuna's brother. There's also Dane Acker, and there's also Jose Acosta. So a lot of good guys coming up from that Low A level that will be up before you know it. And, these guys are young. They're younger than me, so if that gives you any idea. Luis Angel Acuna was born in 2002, which is nuts to think about, but it is Low A, so it is expected that these guys will be pretty young. But that's a bit of an update on the Wood Ducks. I don't know too much about these minor league teams, at least that low, but as we go up here into Double A and Triple A, I will be able to provide a little more insight into all of that. Next team up is, of course, the Hickory Crawdads, and this is a substantial team to take a look at here because, of course, the 2 guys that Texas got for Joey Gallo went straight to Hickory. It was Ezekiel Duran and Trevor Hauver, and you may have remembered from just a few minutes ago as well, a lot of their team just got called up to Frisco. So, or a lot of the big guys, at least, including Foscue and Josh Smith. So looking at how Duran and Hauver have done, Duran has cooled down a little bit lately, but in his 11 games so far with Hickory, he's batting .231, with a 697 OPS. So not amazing, but I mean, he has to definitely take a second to adjust to a new team. Prior to that, he was hitting 290 in 67 games with the equivalent affiliate of the Yankees, 907 OPS for them. Taking a look at Trevor, in 10 games with Hickory, he has batted 268 with a 948 OPS, 3 home runs and 10 driven in. I forgot to mention that as well for Duran. He has 2 home runs with 16 driven in. So they're doing pretty well overall. The Crawdads, though, not as much. They're 4th place in the High A East South Division, 39 and 46. I think they're playing tonight as well. They do have a positive run differential, which I didn't even look at that for the Down East Wood Ducks. But yeah, overall not too bad. And like I just said, a lot of their guys just got pulled up to AA, which is good. I mean, you want to see guys go to the next level. Some other notable players on Texas in Hickory right now is David Garcia, international signing from a few years ago, as well as Avery Weems, which I think he was in a trade. I honestly can't remember, but they got some good stuff going on down there. And as we get into AA and AAA here, you'll get to the really crazy stuff at the moment. Now moving up to AA Frisco, they're 52 and 34 in the AA Central South Division, 10 games ahead of second place, 3-game win streak, plus 62 run differential. They have the only positive run differential in their whole division, so you want to talk about some good pitching. And then they have just overall been doing phenomenal the whole season. But we did talk about all of those COVID and other injuries that put a handful of players on that injured list. So I don't know what has been going on there. I know there is a breakout. At least they have been reporting it within the Rough Riders organization. I believe it stemmed from Josh Young. I don't know that for a fact. But it is definitely impacting their roster, which they just went to Northwest Arkansas for a series. So he was not able to go with them as they're doing more contact tracing. However, he has been doing phenomenal on the season. The pitching has been really good on the season. I've gotten to actually see Cole Winn pitch earlier in the year. If y'all don't remember him, he was drafted a few years ago alongside Hans Kraus. I believe they were in the same year. So he's doing really well. Should hopefully see him next year, ? I know the rotation of the future, which I've talked about it in other podcasts and videos, is ideally like Leiter, Wynn, Dunning, Allard, and then some other guys. Kraus was in the equation until the trade, of course. So maybe the new guy they got, Howard, can fit into it. So maybe, let's say Howard picks up everything and pans out into a starter fully, because he went 3 innings in his last start, but you obviously are looking to get 5 to 7 for a starter. So let's say he ends up getting to that point, and you'll go with Leiter, Dunning, Howard, Allard, and Wynn. I'd probably have Wynn in the second spot, but that's the 5 is the point of that, in no particular order. So it's going to be exciting. I wouldn't expect to see Jack Leiter next year, though, but I am getting off topic. So they have a little bit of COVID problem at the moment, but a lot of guys doing really well. Got to shout out Josh Stowers as well, Bubba Thompson, all kinds of stuff going on in Frisco, so good stuff from them. Now to keep it going, we'll take a look at AAA Round Rock, and they are 41 and 44 with a minus 14 run differential. They're 3rd place in the AAA West East Division. As I'm reading all these, I don't know why this is how the divisions are, but I know they just recently realigned it, so besides the point anyway. But it's always tough to gauge AAA because it's a lot of guys from the MLB roster coming down. They usually don't send them to AA unless they're really struggling. So you'll see some familiar faces on this roster. You got Jung Yang, you got Cole Avila, Brock Burke, Jimmy Hergert, James Jones, Leody Taveras, Nick Solak, of course. So a lot of guys that some of us are familiar with. And that's why it's always hard to determine. Oh, yeah, John King as well. Forgot about him. It's hard to determine how these teams actually are doing. But one player that I wanted to highlight in particular is Steele Walker. He, of course, just got promoted to AAA not that long ago. And in AA, he was batting .255 with 10 home runs and 40 driven in 63 games. He has actually not been doing too hot since his call-up. In 7 games at AAA, he's batting .167 with a .560 OPS, 2 home runs and 5 driven in. Just 1 walk to 8 strikeouts. So not great stuff, but I've always heard just from players and videos and whatever else that the jump from AAA, or rather AA to AAA, is a big one. And it's only been 7 games, so I wouldn't sweat it too much for Steele there. But yeah, he definitely earned the call-up though, Slugging .430 is not half bad for the minor leagues, and 10 home runs in those 63 games. But not too much to say about AAA because it really just is that backup squad, so to speak. The guys come up and down from there all the time. So at the end of the day, not too much going on there. And I don't know if that's every organization does this, but I do know it seems like the Rangers do call up from AA a lot if they're wanting someone to really come up, and then they send people down to AAA. And it makes sense because Frisco is much closer to Arlington than Round Rock. So for those unfamiliar with Texas geography, that's a big difference. I remember back when Gallo was first coming up and they called him up one game, he had to get a police escort from Round Rock just to get to the game on time. So I think for Texas, it's the convenience of Frisco being right there. It's probably a 20-30 minute drive, give or take, traffic from Frisco to Arlington. And it's something like, I don't even know, 3-4-ish hours. So I digress. But AAA is good where it is. Before I talk about the Major League team, I did want to go over how the Joey Gallo trade has panned out so far. It hasn't been a lot of time, like 10 games, but it is important to take a look at how that has panned out. For those who need a reminder, Joey Gallo and Joely Rodriguez were sent to the Yankees in exchange for 4 prospects: Ezekiel Duran, Trevor Hauver, Josh Smith, and Glenn Otto. And one guy that I really haven't talked about a lot yet is Glenn Otto. He hasn't done too well for Round Rock so far. He's 0-1 in 2 games with a 6 ERA in 9 innings. He's given up 11 hits, has walked 4, and has an opponent's batting average of .314. So not very good, although I don't think he was a core piece of that trade. It was really for Smith and Duran and Hauver. So I don't know. I don't think pitching is necessarily something they were going for in that trade. Otherwise, they would have gotten 4 pitchers. But instead, they got 3 position players and a pitcher in exchange for Joely. So I did get requests as well to talk about 2 of the newest young studs for Texas, Andy Ibanez and Yanni Hernandez, which I apologize. I think I'm still mispronouncing that. But both have been surprisingly good in their own rights. Andy Ibanez has been great defensively, and he's had a couple of really good moments on offense. And then Hernandez has actually been pretty all right on offense. Mainly his appeal has been he doesn't strike out. I think he went 26 at-bats or plate appearances, one of the two, without striking out. So he puts the ball in play, and that is definitely the type of guy Texas needs. Definitely 2 welcome additions to the team, and this is the time to be experimenting with those younger guys and some of the prospects who maybe weren't as highly touted, but they definitely have the skill set to be playing in MLB and for a team like the Rangers at this moment. Now that we got all of the minor league talk and a little bit of MLB talk out of the way, I wanted to take a chance here to take some fan questions from my Instagram. I put a story up earlier today asking people whatever questions you have, send them my way. So Starting off here, first question from autograph_man_3000. Did you hear about the COVID outbreak in Frisco? And yes, I did. I covered that earlier, which I didn't look at any of these questions before. So that has been discussed. It's unfortunate, but it looks like they'll be okay roster-wise. Next question is from Noah.acorn. Which prospect are you most excited about? Honestly, it's a tie between a couple of them, which is good. It's a good problem to have. Excluding the obvious answer of Jack Leiter, I would probably say Sam Huff or Luis Angel Acuna, because I've talked about him a lot, I think, at this point. But if he's anything like his brother Ronald, Texas is in for a treat, and he will certainly be a core player if that is the case. Next one is from Matthew Barlow, and he asks, do you think our prospects will turn out? I think so. I know it's been a tough last 10 years developing players, but they have had a couple bright spots. Derek Holland was a homegrown player, so to speak. They got Elvis, Odor, Profar. And I think I talked about it a little bit in the last podcast of why Texas is so rough, or 2 podcasts ago rather. The last one was trade deadline talk. But they do struggle with developing them once they get to the end of the cycle, so to speak. Because through the minor leagues, they do well. But then when they call them up to MLB, it's too early, it's too late, it's this, it's that. So I think a lot of these top guys now, like Huff, Wynn, Leiter, etc., will all turn out well. And maybe not every single one of them, but at least enough to do some damage and get the Rangers back to contention. Next question is from Darian Clark 5. When is Jung going to get the call-up? I think next month when they do the roster expansions, assuming he's not injured or anything else. It's definitely time to put Josh Jung in Arlington. So hopefully next month. And at the moment, third base has just been between Culberson and Holt, and maybe they'll DFA Culberson or something and just fully give Young the chance. Now that I was thinking about it, that's why I paused there for a second. Did they DFA Culberson? I don't even know, because I don't remember seeing him in a while, but they need to give the chance to Young, and as I like to always say, let the kids play. And the last question from Instagram is from M_duh_crazy. In your opinion, do you think the trades this year were valuable? Or rather, he says, do you think they're reasonable? I think it was reasonable. It just really was tough to see Gallo leave, but I thought that Kennedy and Gibson trade was extremely reasonable because Gibson was having a career year and Kennedy was having a huge bounce back year. Gibson's like in his early 30s, I think, and Kennedy is like 36. So that trade needed to happen. They were both at peak value, especially Gibson. He was at his all-time peak value. I think it will end up being probably his lowest career ERA in a season. So that's all you really need to know right there. And similar situation for Kennedy. He found a groove in the closer spot. Was definitely an early contender for the best closer in the AL. I don't think he is anymore. That probably goes to Kendall Graveman. So those were the questions from Instagram. I did have one from YouTube, I think, and it was from a user by the name of Dak Prescott. Not actually Dak, unfortunately, but it's kind of along the same lines as these questions. Do you think that we will be able to compete next year? My answer is no. I think this is something I did mention in the last podcast, that don't expect them to be good next year. They might be, I have no idea, but do not expect it because you will probably be disappointed. And it's not to say that they're not talented. You know, they're going to have guys like Young probably starting the season, maybe guys like Huff starting the season. There's another guy that will probably get called up as Huff. So I wouldn't be fully discouraged, but just don't overhype it because this year there was maybe a glimpse of hope. I mean, the predictions and the projections were awful, but I had faith. I said we were going to win 75 games. They just lost their 75th game today. So If my prediction was the opposite, then I'd be right, I guess. So, yeah. I don't think next year, but 2023 should be the first year that they can genuinely compete, maybe make a run at a wild card, maybe even the division, because Houston should be on the downturn soon. We will see, though, because guys like Leiter, and as I already said, Huff, Young, will be up by next year. Leiter won't be up probably till 2023, but his first year, whatever year that is, will probably be the time that Texas can do something. Which, speaking of that, I wanted to wrap up this podcast by taking a look at how the draft rankings are for 2022 at this moment. I think the Diamondbacks are still playing as I'm recording this. They're up 8-3 on the Padres. Wow. In the top of the 7th. And they're at home. So, wow. That is unexpected. They have kind of been struggling, honestly, the Padres, without Tatis. They're still 66-50. So no slight to them. I love the Padres. I think they're a great squad. But in that NL West, man, you can't you won't win it at that win percentage, which is crazy to think about because San Francisco has totally took off. They're 73-41. That's a 640 win percentage, a 4-game win streak, and 8-2 over their last 10 games. So, sorry, that really threw me off, but the current draft order is Diamondbacks at number 1, which is why I bring that up at all. So right now it's Diamondbacks at 35-80, maybe 36-80 after tonight. Baltimore at 38-75, Texas at 40-75, Pirates at 41-74, and then the next closest is Miami at 48-67. So it was interesting to me because first place they got it by, or rather last place I guess, they have it by a few games, and then Baltimore, Texas, and Pittsburgh are all within 3 games of each other. And then Miami is like 7 games behind that. So I thought that was interesting how these 3 teams have been bunched together. And when it's this close of a race for last, that actually does make a difference. The number 3 pick to the number 2 pick to the number 4 pick, that's a big difference. I would love Texas to be able to just gun it and get the number 1 pick. But the problem is Arizona has absolutely stunk all year. And Texas did have some good runs. End of May, I think even end of June, they had that stretch. So they've had a couple of good runs despite where they're at right now. But that's really the current standings for the draft in 2022 is Arizona at number 1, Baltimore number 2, Texas at number 3, Pittsburgh at number 4, and Miami at number 5. So I know some of y'all don't like that I'm rooting for us to lose, essentially. But when you're at this point in the franchise, in this rebuild, whatever you want to call it, it is crucial to take advantage of these losing seasons. You just saw they did that. They got Jack Leiter, 2nd overall pick. And if they would have not had the 2nd overall pick, they may not have gotten Jack Leiter. They may have picked Kumar Rocker. And Kumar Rocker didn't even get signed by the Mets because he covered up an injury, essentially. So, yeah. That's an extreme situation. But my point is that 2 to 3 to 4 is a huge difference. And we were lucky that whoever was number 1, I think it was Pittsburgh, that they didn't pick Leiter. I for sure thought he was going to go number 1. So I was glad they did that. And I'm hoping they can hold on to number 3, maybe get number 2, because Baltimore is pretty shaky right now. They did win today, I think. Or no, they didn't. They didn't win today. They had a chance in the bottom of the 9th. I think they got shut out. Let me see here real quick. They got shut out. Or no, rather, they were down 6-4. I'm getting it mixed up. They were down 6-4, and I remember seeing earlier tonight they had runners on the corners with 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th. So they had a chance. But I digress greatly. And, of course, the Giants are winning again. They're up 7-0 on the Rockies. I mean, I think they might go all the way this year. It kind of came out of nowhere. They got some of the older guys getting it done. And they might be pairing up with the A's or the Rays. I don't know. something that ends in A's. So, really getting off topic now. But that is where Texas stands with the number 3 overall pick. I can't really speculate yet who they would or who they should pick. I just know that it should be another very good draft class. And honestly, the only one I can think of would be Kumar Rocker, because if he goes back to Vanderbilt, I don't know if he is, but if he does, that could be a thing. He'll be a little older, so maybe he won't go quite as high, but I mean, the dude's still a heck of a pitcher. So, moving on. That is all I have for y'all today on the podcast. It wasn't as long as I thought it would be because I'm not super educated on the minor league system, so I thought that was going to be like half of the podcast, which I think it was, but I don't know. Either way, I hope you learned something here today with what I reported on the minor league teams from Hickory all the way to Round Rock, and a little bit of news on the major league team with Hernandez and Ibanez doing their things. Answered some of y'all's questions, and we talked about where Texas is hopefully going to end up for the draft. So I really hope y'all enjoyed. It's been a blast doing these because, as I always say, I'm great at just talking for a long time about baseball, at least. So it's been great, and I appreciate the support so far. No schedule, as I mentioned as well. And I really want to get some interviews going, but it's just tough right now. Everyone's really busy and everything else going on. So I just wanted to remind y'all again, though, about my SeatGeek code. It is TXRangers, and you will save $20 on a purchase of $50 or more if it's your first one with SeatGeek. Go out and catch a game. Doesn't even have to be a Rangers game, but stay safe, though, Be safe with everything going on right now. You can even get some concert tickets for next year. Everyone's planning these massive tours in 2022, and everyone's on tour right now. So do whatever you'd like, but be safe about it. And be sure to share the podcast with someone who has not listened to it before. Those unique listeners are crucial to what Anchor measures for statistics, and hopefully I can get this thing monetized to continue giving y'all even better content. So, with all that being said, though, I will talk to y'all next time.